The most powerful werewolf in North America sat motionless in his custom wheelchair, watching his private jet taxi away without him, abandoned by his own pack at midnight in a deserted airport terminal. Damien Blackthorne's fingers gripped the leather armrests until his knuckles went white. 6 months ago, he could have torn through steel with those hands. 6 months ago, he'd been the alpha of the Shadow Moon pack, commanding respect from Seattle to Miami. Now he couldn't even feel his legs. The corporate jet's taillights disappeared into the darkness, taking with it everything he'd built. His beta, Marcus, had played the long game perfectly. One staged board meeting, a vote of no confidence, and suddenly an incomplete alpha wasn't fit to lead a billion-dollar empire. The pack elders had nodded along like sheep, forgetting who'd made their comfortable lives possible. "Cowards," he whispered to the empty terminal. His overnight bag sat beside him. 32 years of life reduced to one leather duffel. His wolf paced restlessly beneath his skin, confused and angry at being trapped in a body that wouldn't obey. The beast wanted to hunt, to run, to reclaim what was his. Instead, they were both prisoners. The departure board flickered with delayed flights. Red letters announced cancellations and gate changes to a handful of stranded passengers scattered across the terminal like lost souls. Damien had nowhere to go anyway. His penthouse was locked, his accounts frozen, his pack scattered to the winds or turned against him. Pride had always been his weakness. Now it was all he had left. "Mommy, why is that man all alone?" The small voice cut through his brooding. A little girl with pigtails and paint-stained clothes stood 20 feet away, tugging on her mother's sleeve. The woman looked exhausted, her dark hair escaping from a messy bun, her scrubs wrinkled from what must have been a long shift. "Lily, don't stare," the mother whispered, but her daughter was already walking toward him with the fearless curiosity only children possessed. "Hi," the girl said, stopping directly in front of his wheelchair. "I'm Lily. Are you waiting for your family too?" Damien found himself looking into bright brown eyes that held no judgment, no pity. Just genuine interest from someone too young to understand that powerful men didn't end up alone in airports at midnight. "Something like that," he said carefully. "Lily." The mother hurried over, mortification written across her tired features. "I'm so sorry. She doesn't understand personal space." Maya Chin looked like she'd been running on coffee and determination for weeks. Her scrubs marked her as medical personnel, and the dark circles under her eyes suggested she worked too many shifts to make ends meet. She was pretty in an understated way, the kind of woman who probably didn't realize her own appeal. "It's fine," Damien said, though nothing about his situation was fine. Lily plopped down cross-legged on the cold terminal floor, apparently settling in for conversation. "Are you sad? You look sad." "Mommy says airports make everyone sad because they have to leave people behind." "Lily, please." Maya's cheeks flushed. "We should let the gentleman have his privacy." But something in the child's simple directness cracked something open in Damien's chest. His wolf, which had been snarling and pacing for months, went still. Pack instincts he'd thought were dead stirred to life. Protect the young. Provide for the vulnerable. He pushed the thoughts away. He had nothing to provide. No protection to offer. "Our flight got delayed," Maya explained apologetically. "Weather in Denver. We've been here since 8. Where are you headed?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. "Home to Portland. Lily had surgery here, her appendix. We've been staying with my sister, but..." She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable sharing personal details with a stranger. Damien's enhanced senses picked up more than she was saying. The subtle scent of financial stress, the careful way she counted bills in her wallet, the worn edges of Lily's stuffed animal. Single mother, medical bills, probably choosing between rent and groceries. His wolf stirred again. Pack takes care of pack. But they weren't his pack. He didn't have a pack anymore. "Are you traveling alone?" Maya asked gently, settling into the uncomfortable plastic chair beside him. The simple question hit harder than Marcus's betrayal. "Alone." Yes, that was exactly what he was. For the first time in his adult life, completely and utterly alone. "It appears so," he said. Lily had found a coloring book in her backpack and was now drawing what looked like a wolf. "Fitting." She hummed tunelessly, completely content despite the late hour and uncomfortable surroundings. "I hate flying alone," Maya said quietly. "Makes you feel invisible, doesn't it? Like you could just disappear and no one would notice." She had no idea how accurate that observation was. "What do you do?" he found himself asking. "Pediatric nurse. Night shifts mostly, so Lily can stay with the sitter during the day instead of expensive daycare." Maya rubbed her temples. Not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills. Usually. The honesty in her voice was jarring. When was the last time someone had spoken to him without an agenda? Without wanting something? And you, she asked. Business trip? He almost laughed. Business trip. If only it were that simple. You could say that. Lily looked up from her coloring. Do you have kids? No. A wife. Lily, Maya warned. It's all right, Damien said. No wife either. That's sad, Lily announced with 5-year-old logic. Everyone should have someone to love them. The words hit like a physical blow. His pack had been his family, his purpose, his identity. Without them, what was he? Just a broken man in an expensive suit with nowhere to go. Maya was watching him with the trained eye of someone who dealt with pain professionally. You look like you haven't slept in days. Something like that. When's your flight? The question he'd been dreading. It's complicated. Maya's expression shifted to concern. Are you stranded? Pride warred with practicality. He could call a hotel, charge it to one of his personal cards before Marcus thought to freeze those too. But something about this woman's genuine compassion made him want to be honest. My travel arrangements fell through, he said carefully. Oh no. Maya's hand moved instinctively toward his arm, then stopped. Is there someone you can call? Everyone he could call had either betrayed him or would hang up the moment they heard his voice. The supernatural world moved fast. By now, every pack in North America would know the Shadow Moon Alpha had fallen. Not really. Lily had finished her wolf drawing and was holding it up for inspection. Look, I drew a doggy for you. Damien accepted the paper with hands that shook slightly. The child had no idea she'd drawn his other nature, but the simple gift hit harder than any corporate takeover. Thank you, he said, and meant it. Maya was studying him with growing concern. Listen, I don't know your situation, and you don't have to explain anything, but... She took a breath. There's a 24-hour diner across the street. If you want company while you figure things out. It was such a human offer. So normal. So far from his world of corporate espionage and pack politics that it felt like a lifeline. His wolf stirred again, recognizing something it needed. Not just the woman's kindness, but the family unit she represented. The child who saw past his wheelchair to the man beneath. The mother whose protective instincts were strong enough to offer help to a dangerous stranger. I don't want to impose, he said. You're not. Maya stood, shouldering her battered purse. Besides, Lily's going to be awake for hours anyway. Hospital schedules mess up sleep cycles. She was offering him sanctuary, and she didn't even know it. Didn't know that kindness to a fallen alpha could be dangerous. That his enemies might see her as leverage. That getting involved with his world could destroy everything she'd worked to build. He should say no. Should protect her by walking away. Instead, he found himself nodding. All right, he said. Coffee sounds good. Lily cheered and grabbed her backpack. Maya moved behind his wheelchair without asking, her hands settling naturally on the handles. I can manage, he said stiffly. I'm sure you can, she replied easily. But I'm a nurse. I push wheelchairs for a living. Consider it professional habit. As they moved toward the terminal exit, Damien felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. For 6 months, he'd been focused on what he'd lost. Now, surrounded by the gentle chatter of a 5-year-old and the quiet strength of her mother, he wondered if maybe there was something else to find. His wolf settled deeper, content in a way that had nothing to do with power or dominance, and everything to do with the simple presence of pack, even if this pack didn't know what they were offering. The automatic doors opened, and cool night air hit his face. Behind them, the empty terminal waited for morning flights and new destinations. Ahead, a small diner glowed like a beacon in the darkness. It wasn't the empire he'd lost, but for tonight it was enough. Wanting to see what would happen next? Subscribe to this channel to get to listen to more of our upcoming exciting stories. Click on the subscribe button now. Thank you. Chapter 2. The diner's fluorescent lights cast everything in harsh white, making the red vinyl booths look like crime scenes. Damien found himself wedged into a corner booth, his wheelchair parked at the table's end while Lily colored on paper placemats and Maya stirred sugar into her 3rd cup of coffee. The pancakes here are really good, Lily announced, attacking a stack drowning in syrup. They have chocolate chips. It's 3 a.m, Maya said mildly. Normal children would be eating cereal. I'm not normal, Lily replied with 5-year-old logic. Normal children don't have their appendix taken out. Damien found himself almost smiling. Almost. The child's resilience reminded him of young pack members, the way they bounced back from adversity with an energy that exhausted their elders. Maya caught his expression. She's been through a lot this week. I figure pancakes at 3 a.m. are the least of my worries. The waitress, a tired woman with kind eyes, refilled Damien's untouched coffee. He'd ordered it to fit in, but his enhanced metabolism processed caffeine too quickly for it to matter. What he really needed was meat, raw preferably, but that wasn't exactly diner fare. So, Maya said quietly, do you want to talk about what happened? I mean, you don't have to, but sometimes it helps. Damien studied her face. No agenda lurked behind her eyes, no calculation about what information might be worth. Just genuine concern from someone who made a living caring for others. Business disagreement, he said finally. Must have been some disagreement to strand you at an airport. If only she knew. Marcus hadn't just stranded him. He'd systematically dismantled everything Damien had built. The pack's legitimate businesses, their territory agreements, even their safe houses. By dawn, there wouldn't be a place in supernatural America where Damien Blackthorne could find sanctuary. You could say that. Maya leaned back, clearly recognizing a closed door when she saw one. Well, for what it's worth, business partners who abandon you at airports probably weren't worth having anyway. The simple wisdom of it struck him. Marcus had been his beta for 8 years, his best friend since childhood. They'd built the Shadow Moon Empire together, transforming a struggling pack into a financial powerhouse. Damien had trusted him with everything, including his vulnerability after the attack. Apparently, that trust had been misplaced. You're probably right, he said. Mommy always knows things, Lily added helpfully. She knew I was getting sick before I did. And she knows when people are lying. Maya's cheeks flushed. Lily, eat your pancakes. But Damien was intrigued. Really? It's nothing mystical, Maya said quickly. I just read people well. Occupational hazard of being a nurse. You learn to watch for signs. His wolf stirred with interest. Heightened intuition wasn't uncommon in humans who'd been around supernatural creatures, though they usually didn't realize what was causing it. Maya's late husband, perhaps? But no, she wore her wedding ring on her right hand now, a widow's placement, and her grief felt too fresh for supernatural exposure. What kind of signs? He asked. Body language, mostly. The way someone holds tension, how they breathe when they're stressed. You, for instance, you sit like you're ready to fight even though you're in a wheelchair. And you haven't touched your coffee, but you keep wrapping your hands around the mug like you need the warmth. Perceptive. Dangerous, potentially, if his enemies decided she was a liability. The thought came from nowhere and everywhere at once. His enemies. As if he still had the kind of power that created enemies worth worrying about. I don't like coffee much, he said. Then why order it? Good question. Seemed polite. Lily had finished her pancakes and was now coloring a new picture. This one featuring what looked like a house with 3 stick figures standing in front of it. 2 tall, 1 small. Who's that? Maya asked, peering at the drawing. Our new friend, Lily said matter-of-factly. He can stay in the guest room. Lily. Maya's voice carried gentle warning. We don't have a guest room. The couch is comfy. I sleep there sometimes when I have bad dreams. Damien felt something twist in his chest. The child was casually offering him shelter with the uncomplicated generosity that only came from innocence. No calculations about property values or security deposits or background checks. That's very kind, he said carefully, but I'll figure something out. Where? Maya asked directly. It's almost 4 a.m. Hotels don't usually take walk-ins at this hour, and... She gestured at his wheelchair. Do you have transportation? The honest answer was no. He depended on pack resources for so long that simple logistics like car rentals and hotel reservations felt foreign. His credit cards would work for now, but Marcus would freeze them soon enough. I'll manage, he said. I'm sure you will. Maya's tone suggested she didn't believe him. But managing and being comfortable are different things. Look, I know we just met, but Lily's right. Our couch is pretty comfortable. And it's just for tonight, until you can make other arrangements. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse. Accept charity from humans? Sleep on furniture that probably cost less than his weekly dry cleaning bill? His pride recoiled at the very idea. But his wolf had gone very still, the way it did when something important was happening. Pack instincts he'd thought were dead stirred to life. Safe den. Protective female. Young to guard. I couldn't impose, he said weakly. You're not imposing. You're accepting help, which is different. Maya's voice carried the firm kindness of someone used to dealing with stubborn patients. Besides, Lily would never forgive me if I let her new friend sleep in an airport. Please, Lily added, looking up from her drawing with those wide brown eyes. I'll share my blanket. And that somehow was what broke him. Not the corporate betrayal or the loss of his empire or the knowledge that he'd probably never walk again. A 5-year-old offering to share her blanket. All right, he said quietly. Just for tonight. Maya smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her, and something in his chest went warm. Good. Now let's get out of here before Lily crashes from her sugar high. The drive to Maya's apartment complex revealed more than she probably intended to share. Her Honda Civic had seen better decades, with a passenger door that stuck and an engine that coughed like a dying man. She drove with the careful precision of someone who couldn't afford repairs, taking corners gently and accelerating slowly. Sorry about the car, she said, navigating a pothole that would have bottomed out anything with less ground clearance. I keep meaning to trade it in, but cars cost money, Damien finished. Exactly. She shot him a grateful look for understanding. Medical bills from Lily's surgery pretty much wiped out our emergency fund. Her honesty was jarring. In his world, people didn't admit financial vulnerability. Money was power, and admitting you didn't have it was like showing your throat to a predator. Insurance didn't cover it? Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Insurance covered some of it. The important parts. But there are always extras. Ambulance fees, anesthesiologist charges, overnight monitoring. It adds up. In the back seat, Lily was fighting sleep, her head nodding as she tried to stay awake long enough to keep coloring. Damien found himself watching her in the rearview mirror, noting the way her small hands gripped her crayons even as her eyes drifted closed. How long since her father died? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Maya's hands tightened on the steering wheel. 2 years in March. Car accident. I'm sorry. Thank you. She was quiet for a moment. David was a good man. A little obsessive about his work, but good. He would have loved watching Lily color wolves. Wolves. Interesting word choice. What did he do? Research mostly. Government contracts, very hush-hush. I never really understood it, but he traveled a lot and asked strange questions about animal behavior patterns. Maya turned into a parking lot dominated by a complex that had seen better decades. I still have boxes of his files in the closet. Can't bring myself to go through them. Damien's wolf went very, very still. Government contracts involving animal behavior patterns. Research that required travel and secrecy. In his experience, there were only a few types of government work that fit that description. And most of them involved hunting his kind. Maya parked in front of a ground-floor unit and killed the engine. Home sweet home, she said with forced cheerfulness. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with the careful eye of someone who shopped at thrift stores and made every dollar count. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator, and a few professional family photos showed happier times. Maya, a dark-haired man who must have been David, and a younger Lily. David looked exactly like what Damien would have expected from a government researcher. Serious eyes, analytical features, the kind of intensity that suggested a man who asked uncomfortable questions for a living. Lily teeth, Maya commanded gently. It's way past bedtime. But I want to show him my room. Tomorrow. Our friend needs sleep too. Lily hugged Damien's legs, the only part of him she could easily reach from his wheelchair, and scampered off toward what he assumed was the bathroom. The casual affection hit him harder than it should have. When was the last time someone had touched him without wanting something? Maya was bustling around the living room, pulling sheets and a pillow from a hall closet. The couch pulls out into a bed. It's not fancy, but it's clean. Bathroom's down the hall, towels are in the cabinet. Do you need help transferring? The question was asked with professional detachment, but Damien could smell her uncertainty. She was trying to be helpful without being invasive, and he appreciated the effort. I can manage, he said. Thank you. There's sandwich stuff in the kitchen if you get hungry. I usually work the night shift at the hospital, but I took tonight off because of Lily's flight. I'll be back on the schedule tomorrow, though so. She trailed off, realizing what she was saying. I'll be gone by then, he assured her. Right. Of course. She smoothed the sheets with nervous energy. I just meant, if you're still figuring things out, Lily gets home from school around 3:30. Mrs. Rodriguez next door usually watches her until I get back from work. She was telling him this why? So he'd know the child would be supervised? Or because some part of her was already planning for him to stay longer than one night? I'll have other arrangements by then, he said firmly. Sure. Maya finished with the bed and stepped back. Well, I'll let you get settled. If you need anything, my room is right there. She pointed to a closed door across the small hallway. As she turned to leave, Damien found himself speaking. Maya. She paused. Yes. Thank you. For this. All of it. I know it's not normal to bring home strangers from airports. Her smile was soft, tired, but genuine. Normal's overrated. Besides, Lily likes you, and she's got good instincts about people. After she disappeared into her room, Damien sat in his wheelchair staring at the pull-out bed. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Through thin walls, he could hear Maya helping Lily brush her teeth, their voices a gentle murmur of domestic routine. His wolf stretched inside him, content in a way it hadn't been since before the attack. This wasn't pack exactly, but it was family. The kind of warm, uncomplicated connection he'd forgotten existed. The irony wasn't lost on him. The most powerful alpha in North America, or former alpha anyway, finding peace in a cramped apartment with a struggling single mother and her 5-year-old daughter. He transferred to the bed with practiced efficiency, noting how the springs protested under his weight. The sheets smelled like generic laundry detergent and something uniquely domestic, the scent of a home where people actually lived instead of just existing. As he settled under covers that had probably come from a discount store, Damien tried to plan his next move. He needed to contact his remaining allies, liquidate his personal assets before Marcus froze everything, find somewhere safe to regroup. Instead, he found himself listening to Lily's sleepy questions from the next room. Is he really going to stay on our couch? And Maya's gentle responses, just for tonight, baby. He'll figure things out tomorrow. Just for tonight. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they felt like a countdown. In 12 years of leading the Shadow Moon Pack, Damien had never felt as safe as he did right now on a lumpy couch in a stranger's apartment. The thought should have been humiliating. Instead, as sleep finally claimed him, it felt like coming home. 3 miles away, in a black SUV parked outside the airport, Marcus Thornfield ended a phone call with a satisfied smile. His former alpha, had been spotted leaving the terminal with 2 humans. A woman and a child. Found him, he told the others in the vehicle. He's getting soft in his old age. Making friends with mortals. The passenger, a thin man with predator's eyes, laughed. Perfect. Nothing motivates cooperation like leverage. Marcus started the engine. By tomorrow night, Damien would be back under pack control, or his new human friends would learn why werewolves were still whispered about in dark corners of the world. Either way, this little rebellion was about to end. In Maya's apartment, Damien's eyes snapped open as his wolf scented danger on the wind. But the apartment remained quiet, Lily's breathing steady from the next room, Maya's heartbeat slow with sleep. He told himself he was imagining threats where none existed. That his wolf was just restless from the upheaval of the last few days. But deep in his bones, he knew Marcus was coming. The only question was whether he'd leave before Maya and Lily became collateral damage, or stay and risk everything to protect the first real sanctuary he'd found in months. In the hall closet, hidden behind winter coats and old photo albums, boxes of David Chen's research files waited in patient darkness. Files that contained detailed behavioral profiles of North American werewolf packs, territorial maps, and a comprehensive study of alpha hierarchies that had taken 2 years of dangerous fieldwork to compile. Research that would have made David Chen a very wealthy man if he'd lived long enough to publish it. Research that would have made him a very dead man if the wrong supernatural creatures had discovered his work. Research that his widow and daughter were completely unaware they were living with, day after day, in their small, safe apartment where wolves and humans shared midnight pancakes, and no one suspected that the most dangerous secrets were hiding in plain sight. Outside, the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, and Damien Blackthorne slept peacefully for the first time in months, unaware that he'd just brought the full attention of his enemies to the doorstep of a woman whose late husband had dedicated his life to hunting creatures exactly like him. If you are enjoying this story, please do us a favor to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more exciting stories. Thank you. Chapter 3. Damien woke to the sound of Maya's car pulling out of the parking lot. Her 12-hour shift at the hospital had started early, leaving him alone in the quiet apartment with Lily, who was still fast asleep in her small bedroom. The digital clock on the cable box read 3:17 a.m. in harsh green numbers. He'd been dreaming of running, something he'd avoided since the accident. But these dreams were different. Instead of the familiar nightmare of waking up to find his legs useless, He'd been moving through shadows with predatory grace, his wolf-enhanced senses mapping every threat in a 10-mile radius. Damien shifted on the pull-out couch, working the kinks out of shoulders that had borne too much weight for too many months. Maya had left a pot of coffee ready to brew and a note on the kitchen counter in neat handwriting. Help yourself to anything. Lily knows the morning routine. Emergency numbers on the fridge. Thank you for staying. Thank you for staying. As if his presence was a gift instead of an imposition. Through the thin apartment walls, he could hear Mrs. Rodriguez next door watching late-night television in Spanish. The building settled around him with small creaks and sighs. Normal sounds of normal people living normal lives. His wolf stirred uneasily. Something was wrong. Damien went very still, every sense sharpening to supernatural alertness. The building's familiar sounds continued, but underneath them, something else moved. Footsteps in the parking lot, too measured to be casual. The soft whisper of equipment being handled by professional hands. 3 vehicles, 8 heartbeats, all elevated with adrenaline. The metallic scent of weapons being checked and loaded. Marcus had found him. Damien's first instinct was to run. Get out, get away, lead the threat somewhere that wouldn't endanger innocents. But his wheelchair sat across the room, and even if he could reach it, where would he go? Down the hallway where Lily slept in blissful ignorance? The footsteps stopped outside Maya's front door. Damien transferred from the bed to his wheelchair with fluid efficiency, muscle memory taking over as his mind raced through tactical options. The apartment had 1 exit, windows too high for his current mobility, and a 5-year-old who trusted him to keep her safe. His wolf rose inside him, no longer the caged, frustrated beast of the past 6 months. This was different. Focused. Deadly. The front door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and cheap wood. 3 figures in tactical gear poured through the breach, assault rifles raised and ready. Professional mercenaries, not pack members. Marcus wasn't risking his own people on this cleanup operation. Damien Blackthorne, the lead man, called out, his voice artificially modulated by a voice changer. Come quietly and the civilians don't get hurt. Civilians. They knew about Lily. Damien's world went red at the edges. I'm here, he called back, rolling his wheelchair into the living room with his hands raised. The child has nothing to do with this. The leader kept his weapon trained on Damien while his companions swept the small apartment with military precision. Where's the woman? Work. Hospital. Let them think Maya was safely away. What do you want? Marcus Steele sends his regards. The leader's finger tightened on his trigger. Nothing personal, but an alpha who can't stand isn't much of an alpha. From Lily's room came a small, sleepy voice. Hello. Is someone here? Every mercenary's head turned toward the sound. And Damien struck. The change that came over him wasn't the traditional werewolf transformation he'd known all his life. His wolf didn't take physical form. Instead, it merged with his human consciousness in a way that should have been impossible. Enhanced strength flowed through his arms and shoulders while his mind processed tactical information at supernatural speed. He launched himself from the wheelchair with explosive force, using the armrests for leverage to propel his body into the nearest mercenary. His enhanced upper body strength sent the man flying backward into the kitchen with a sickening crunch of breaking ribs. The leader spun, trying to track this new threat, but Damien was already moving. He hit the floor and rolled, using the coffee table as cover while his hands found the heavy ceramic lamp Maya probably couldn't afford to replace. Daddy! Lily's voice was closer now, frightened and confused. The second mercenary turned toward her bedroom, and Damien's vision went white with rage. No one, threatened Pak Young under his protection. He hurled the lamp with inhuman accuracy, catching the mercenary in the temple and dropping him instantly. The third man fired wildly, automatic rounds chewing through drywall and cheap furniture as Damien rolled behind the couch. His wolf was feeding him information faster than his human mind could process. Heartbeats, breathing patterns, the exact trajectory of incoming fire. He could smell their fear now, the sour stench of professionals who'd realized their easy target had just become their worst nightmare. Lily, stay in your room, Damien shouted, using the alpha voice that compelled obedience even from humans. Get under your bed and don't come out. The leader was shouting into his radio, calling for backup that was probably already surrounding the building. This had to end fast. Damien grabbed the edge of the overturned coffee table and used it as a shield, pushing forward with strength that amazed even him. The remaining mercenaries' bullets splintered wood, but couldn't penetrate the solid oak surface Maya had probably found at a garage sale. The leader tried to flank him, but Damien's enhanced senses tracked his movement perfectly. He spun the table, catching the man's legs and sending him crashing into the wall. Before the mercenary could recover, Damien was on him, his hands finding pressure points with surgical precision. The man went limp. Silence fell over the destroyed apartment, broken only by Lily's quiet crying from her bedroom and the approaching wail of sirens. Someone had called the police, Mrs. Rodriguez, probably, bless her paranoid heart. Damien dragged himself back to his wheelchair, every muscle in his upper body screaming from the exertion. Around him, Maya's careful home lay in ruins. Bullet holes stitched the walls, furniture lay in splintered pieces, and glass from shattered picture frames glittered across the carpet like deadly snow. "Lily," he called softly. "I'm scared," came the small voice from her room. "I know, sweetheart. It's safe now. Can you come out?" She appeared in the doorway clutching her stuffed wolf, tears streaming down her face. Her room had been spared the worst of the damage, but she could see the destruction in the living room. "Are you hurt?" she asked, running to him. Damien caught her small body against his chest, his enhanced senses confirming she was physically unharmed. "No, I'm okay. Are you?" She nodded against his shoulder. "Who were those men? Why did they break our house?" "Our house." Even in her fear and confusion, she included him in her definition of home. "Bad men," he said simply. "But they're gone now." The sirens were getting closer. Soon this place would be swarming with police, paramedics, federal agents if Marcus had been smart about covering his tracks. Damien needed to get Lily out of here before. "Oh my God!" Maya stood in the destroyed doorway, still wearing scrubs from her hospital shift. Her face was white with shock as she took in the devastation, the unconscious mercenaries, and her daughter clinging to a man she'd known for less than 24 hours. "Maya," Damien started. "Are you hurt?" She was already moving, her nurse's training overriding everything else. "Lily, baby, come to mommy." But Lily didn't let go of Damien. "He saved me, mommy." The bad men came, but he stopped them. Maya's eyes met Damien's over her daughter's head, and he saw the exact moment when she registered what she was looking at. A paralyzed man in a wheelchair, surrounded by 3 unconscious armed mercenaries, and enough destruction to level a small house. "How?" she whispered. The police sirens were 2 blocks away now. Soon this apartment would become a crime scene, and Maya and Lily would be swept into a system that couldn't protect them from supernatural threats. "We need to leave," Damien said quietly. "Right now. I'll explain everything, but we can't be here when the police arrive. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell just happened." Maya's voice cracked with stress and adrenaline. "These men had military weapons, Damien. They came here looking for you. My daughter could have been killed." She was right, of course. His presence had brought violence to the only sanctuary he'd known in months. But running now wouldn't keep them safe. Marcus knew where they lived, knew Maya and Lily existed. They were already targets. "You're right," he said. "This is my fault. But staying here won't keep you safe. Those men worked for someone who wants me dead, and now they know about you." Maya pulled Lily close, her protective instincts warring with her need for answers. "Who are you?" "Really? 1 block away. 30 seconds, maybe less." "I'm exactly who I told you I was," Damien said. "And I'm something I should have told you from the beginning." His eyes began to glow with an inner amber light, his wolf rising close enough to the surface to manifest physically without transformation. The air around him shimmered with predatory energy that made every human instinct scream about apex predators and midnight hunts. Maya's breath caught, but she didn't run. "What are you?" "Werewolf," he said simply. "Alpha of the Shadow Moon Pack. Or I was, until my beta decided a paralyzed leader was an embarrassment to be eliminated." The police sirens turned into the parking lot, their red and blue lights painting the destroyed apartment in shifting colors. "Werewolf," Maya repeated slowly, as if testing the word. Then, incredibly, she laughed, a sound edged with hysteria but lacking true fear. "Of course you are. Because my life wasn't complicated enough already." Lily looked between them with 5-year-old confusion. "What's a werewolf?" "Someone who can turn into a wolf," Maya explained automatically, her nurse's pragmatism overriding the supernatural impossibility. "Like in the movies, but real." "Cool," Lily said, and Damien felt something loosen in his chest. Children adapted so much faster than adults to things that challenged their understanding of reality. Heavy footsteps pounded up the outdoor stairs toward Maya's front door. "Decision time," Damien said quietly. Stay and answer questions from people who can't protect you from supernatural threats, or trust me to keep you both safe. Maya looked at her destroyed home, her terrified daughter, and the man who'd somehow fought off 3 armed mercenaries from a wheelchair. Her late husband's research boxes seemed to whisper from the closet, files full of information about creatures she'd always assumed were fictional. If I go with you, she said slowly, will you tell me everything? The truth. Everything I can. And you'll keep Lily safe? Damien's wolf rose to the surface, lending weight to his words. With my life. The police were at the door now, calling for anyone inside to identify themselves. Maya made her decision with the swift decisiveness of someone used to life-or-death choices. Lily, grab your backpack. The one with your important things. Are we going on an adventure? Lily asked, brightening despite her tears. Something like that. Maya was already moving, grabbing essentials with practiced efficiency. Damien, can you? Transfer to your car, yes. He was already moving toward his wheelchair. But we need to go out the back. There is no back exit. There will be. Damien's enhanced strength made short work of the sliding glass door that led to Maya's tiny patio. The drop to the ground was manageable, and Maya's car was parked close enough to reach without crossing the police perimeter. As they escaped into the night, leaving behind the ruins of the first real home Damien had known in months, he found himself thinking about transformation. Not the physical change from human to wolf that had defined his existence for 32 years, but something deeper. His paralysis hadn't weakened his wolf. It had forced both sides of his nature to merge in ways he'd never imagined possible. Enhanced strength, predatory intelligence, tactical awareness that bordered on supernatural. Abilities that might actually make him more dangerous now than he'd been when he could run on 4 legs. But the most profound change wasn't physical. For the first time in his life, he was fighting not for territory or dominance or pack politics, but for something infinitely more precious. A small family that had offered him sanctuary when he had nothing left to give in return. In Maya's Honda, as they drove through empty streets toward an uncertain future, Lily fell asleep clutching her stuffed wolf, while Maya gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled determination. So, Maya said quietly, not taking her eyes off the road, werewolves are real, you used to be their leader, someone wants you dead, and now my daughter and I are fugitives. Did I miss anything? The part where I'm falling in love with both of you, Damien thought but didn't say. Instead, he watched the city lights blur past and wondered if he'd just saved the only family he'd ever truly wanted, or doomed them all. Behind them, smoke rose from the apartment complex as fire investigators tried to determine how 3 armed mercenaries had been defeated by a man in a wheelchair. The official report would blame gas explosions and structural failure. The truth, as always in Damien's world, would remain hidden in shadows. But in those shadows, Marcus Steele was already planning his next move. The first team had failed, but they'd provided valuable intelligence. His former alpha had evolved, adapted, become something unexpected. No matter. Evolution was simply another word for desperation, and desperate men made mistakes. Maya Chun and her daughter would be the perfect bait for the trap he was already setting. After all, even the most powerful predator had weaknesses. And Damien Blackthorn's weakness was driving away from the ruins of their temporary sanctuary, trusting him to keep them safe in a world where safety was just another word for the calm before the storm. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Chapter 4. The safe house Elena had secured was a far cry from Maya's cozy apartment. Located in an industrial district 40 miles outside the city, the converted warehouse offered security over comfort. Reinforced steel doors, no windows at ground level, and enough space to house a small army. Or in this case, 3 fugitives and 1 very dangerous she-wolf with a law degree. Elena Vasquez had arrived at dawn with coffee, tactical gear, and a briefcase full of documents that painted a picture uglier than anything Damien had imagined. She stood now in the warehouse's main room, her designer suit incongruous against the concrete walls, addressing Maya with the patient tone of someone used to explaining supernatural politics to confused humans. Your husband wasn't just a researcher, Elena said gently. He was one of the most effective werewolf hunters the government ever employed. His files on pack hierarchies and territorial boundaries were considered the definitive guide to supernatural communities in North America. Maya sat at the folding table Elena had provided, David's research boxes open around her like evidence of a crime she'd unknowingly been living with for years. Her hands shook as she lifted another file, this one labeled Shadow Moon Territory Analysis Blackthorn D. He was hunting Damien, she said quietly, her voice hollow with the weight of revelation. Specifically hunting him. Lily played quietly in the corner with her coloring books, wearing the headphones Elena had thoughtfully provided. The she-wolf had experience with human children, apparently, another detail that spoke to how deeply the supernatural world had infiltrated normal life. David Chin was very good at his job, Elena confirmed. Too good, as it turned out. Damien watched Maya's face as she processed the implications. Every line of her husband's research told the same story. David had been closing in on something big, a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of pack leadership. His accident hadn't been random. It had been an execution disguised as tragedy. Marcus killed him, Maya said, not really a question. Almost certainly. Elena pulled out a tablet, swiping through police reports and insurance claims. David's brake lines were severed, but the investigating officers wrote it off as wear and tear on an older vehicle. Classic professional job. Maya's laugh held no humor. He always complained about needing new brakes. I kept telling him to get them fixed, but he said the car was fine. She looked up at Damien with eyes that held too much pain. He died because he found out about people like you. About what you really are. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Damien wanted to defend his kind, to explain that David's death was the work of one corrupt alpha, not representative of all werewolves. But Maya's husband was still dead, and Damien's presence in her life had only brought more violence. Maya, he started. Don't. She held up a hand, her nurse's training helping her compartmentalize trauma, even as her world crumbled around her. I need to understand this first. All of it. Elena cleared her throat diplomatically. There's more you should know. About why David was so focused on Damien specifically. She produced another file, this one older and bound in cracked leather. The pages inside were handwritten in multiple languages, some dating back centuries. This is a translation of the Covenant Prophecy, Elena explained. Every major pack in North America knows some version of it, though most dismiss it as folklore. Damien had heard fragments of the prophecy growing up, but his father had always insisted it was superstitious nonsense. Ancient werewolves creating mythology to explain their fear of change. Elena began to read. When the strong are made weak and the weak become strong, when the alpha falls but does not break, when two worlds collide through innocent blood, then shall the broken alpha rise to either unite the packs in glory or scatter them to the winds of destruction. Maya looked between Elena and Damien. Broken alpha. That's what they called you, isn't it? Those men who attacked the apartment. David believed the prophecy was real, Elena continued. And more importantly, he believed Damien was the broken alpha it described. His research shows he'd been tracking the prophecy for years, trying to determine whether Damien would be humanity's salvation or its downfall. The implications hit Damien like cold water. David Chin hadn't just been hunting him for sport or government contracts. He'd been trying to prevent or fulfill an ancient prophecy. A prophecy that cast Damien as either savior or destroyer of the supernatural world. What did he conclude? Damien asked. Elena's expression grew grim. That's where it gets interesting. David's final reports suggest he'd changed his assessment. Instead of viewing you as a threat to be eliminated, he started believing you might be exactly what the supernatural world needs, an alpha who could bridge the gap between human and werewolf communities. And Marcus found out, Maya said, understanding flooding her voice. Marcus found out that a government hunter was reconsidering his target. Worse, David had started reaching out to other pack leaders, trying to build a coalition to oppose Marcus's growing influence. Elena pulled up more files on her tablet. David Chin wasn't just hunting werewolves. By the end, he was trying to save them. The silence that followed was broken by a crash from the corner where Lily was coloring. She'd knocked over her water cup, and the liquid was spreading across the concrete floor in an impossible pattern. Not random spillage, but forming distinct shapes that looked almost like territorial boundaries, Elena breathed, staring at the water patterns. Those are pack territorial markers. Maya was on her feet instantly, rushing to check on her daughter. Lily, honey, are you okay? I'm sorry, Mommy. The water it wanted to make pictures. Lily looked up with wide, confused eyes. Like when I draw the wolves. They tell me where to put the lines. Elena and Damien exchanged a look loaded with supernatural knowledge that Maya was only beginning to grasp. Lily, Elena said carefully, kneeling beside the child. Have you always been good at drawing wolves? Since Daddy died, Lily said matter-of-factly. He used to draw them too, but his were scary. Mine are nice wolves. They're looking for their family. Maya's face had gone white. What are you saying? That my daughter is, what, psychic? Not psychic, Elena said gently. Something else. Something that should be impossible. She turned to address Damien directly. You said her father was a government researcher. Did you sense anything unusual about him? About his bloodline? Damien thought back to the family photos in Maya's apartment, trying to remember details beyond David's analytical features. There had been something, a subtle scent on the man's clothes in the pictures, faded by time but still detectable to supernatural senses. Dormant bloodline, he said slowly. Very faint, but there. I thought it was just exposure to supernatural research subjects. David Chen wasn't just hunting werewolves, Elena said, her voice tight with implications. He was one of us. Dormant probably didn't even know it himself, but the bloodline was there. Maya sank into her chair as if her legs had given out. You're telling me my husband was part werewolf and didn't know it? It happens more often than you'd think. Dormant genes can skip generations, sometimes lying inactive for decades. But when they do manifest... Elena looked at Lily, who had returned to her coloring with unsettling focus. Children from dormant bloodlines often show abilities before they show physical transformation. What kind of abilities? Maya's voice was barely a whisper. Pattern recognition, territorial instincts, the ability to sense pack dynamics and supernatural hierarchies. Elena gestured at the water patterns, still drying on the floor. Lily just drew a perfect map of current pack territories in the Pacific Northwest. Information that should be impossible for a human child to know. Damien felt his wolf stir with recognition. Pack young with unusual gifts weren't unheard of, but Lily's abilities seemed to go beyond typical supernatural awareness. She was mapping territories she'd never seen, understanding pack dynamics she'd never been taught. This is why Marcus wants her, he realized aloud. Elena nodded grimly. A child with dormant bloodline abilities and the capacity to understand supernatural politics? She'd be invaluable to someone planning a large-scale reorganization of pack territories. Reorganization? Maya demanded. Elena opened her briefcase and spread out a new set of documents, financial records, property deeds, corporate filings. Marcus hasn't just been planning to eliminate opposition alphas. He's been systematically selling pack territories to human developers, breaking apart the traditional structure that's kept our kind hidden for centuries. The papers painted a picture of breathtaking betrayal. Sacred pack lands sold to shopping mall developers. Ancient running grounds turned into suburban housing developments. Territorial boundaries that had stood for generations erased with a few signatures and wire transfers. He's destroying everything, Damien said, his voice rough with fury. Centuries of tradition, of careful balance between our world and theirs. And making billions in the process, Elena confirmed. But here's what he didn't count on, some of his deals are falling through. Turns out, selling supernatural territory to humans has unexpected consequences. Construction crews are reporting strange accidents, equipment failures, animals behaving aggressively. The developers are starting to ask questions. Maya was studying the financial documents with the analytical mind that had made her a good nurse. These purchase agreements, they're contingent on something called territorial compliance verification. What does that mean? It means Marcus needs someone with territorial mapping abilities to confirm the boundaries are stable for human development, Elena explained. Someone who can guarantee that selling the land won't trigger supernatural retaliation or environmental anomalies. The pieces clicked together in Damien's mind with sickening clarity. Lily. He needs Lily to validate his sales. A child with dormant werewolf abilities and supernatural territorial awareness? She could map every pack boundary in North America. With her validation, Marcus could sell supernatural lands without worrying about mystical complications. Maya gathered Lily closer, her protective instincts overriding everything else. No, absolutely not. I don't care about prophecies or pack politics or any of this. My daughter is not going to be used by some corrupt werewolf businessman. Maya, Damien said carefully, Marcus isn't going to give you a choice. He's already shown he's willing to kill to get what he wants. David's death, the attack on your apartment, that was him testing our defenses. Then we run. We disappear. Change our names, move somewhere he can't find us. Elena shook her head. There's nowhere you can hide from the supernatural world. Not now that they know what Lily can do. And running won't stop Marcus from destroying pack territories across the continent. Lily looked up from her coloring book, her small face serious beyond her years. The wolves in my pictures are scared, she said quietly. They don't have homes anymore. Someone's taking their homes away. The innocence in her voice was heartbreaking. She could sense the territorial disruption Marcus was causing, but she couldn't understand the greed and betrayal driving it. Maya closed her eyes, and Damien could smell the salt of unshed tears. My husband died trying to stop this. Now you're asking me to risk my daughter to finish what he started. I'm not asking you to risk anything, Damien said firmly. This is my fight, my responsibility. Elena can get you both somewhere safe while I deal with Marcus. With what? Maya's eyes flashed with anger. You're in a wheelchair, Damien. You have no pack, no resources, no political support. How exactly do you plan to stop a corrupt alpha with billions of dollars and military connections? It was a fair question. Everything Maya said was true. He was a broken alpha with no traditional power base. But the attack on her apartment had shown him something important. His paralysis hadn't weakened his abilities. It had transformed them into something unprecedented. The prophecy, he said slowly. Elena, read it again. The part about two worlds colliding through innocent blood. Elena pulled out the ancient text. When two worlds collide through innocent blood, then shall the broken alpha rise to either unite the packs in glory or scatter them to the winds of destruction. Lily, Damien continued. She's the collision point. Human and werewolf, innocent blood carrying dormant abilities that bridge both worlds. David's research brought the supernatural world into your family's life, and now Lily represents something completely new. Maya was shaking her head. You're talking about using my 5-year-old daughter to fulfill some ancient prophecy. Do you hear how insane that sounds? I'm talking about accepting what she already is, Damien corrected gently. Maya, look at her drawings. Look at the water patterns. Lily isn't going to have a normal human life regardless of what we do. The question is whether she grows up understanding her abilities in a world where supernatural creatures are protected, or whether she becomes a tool for someone like Marcus who sees her as a commodity. In the corner, Lily had begun humming while she colored, a melody none of them recognized but that seemed to resonate in the warehouse's concrete walls. Her pictures showed wolves running free through forests and meadows, pack families gathering under starlit skies, humans and werewolves sharing space in harmony. She's drawing the world as it could be, Elena said softly. Not as it is, but as it should be. Maya looked at her daughter, then at the evidence of her late husband's secret life, then at Damien, the broken alpha who had somehow become the center of her rapidly changing world. If I agree to this, she said finally, if I let you try to stop Marcus, what happens to us afterward? Assuming we survive, what kind of life does Lily have in your supernatural world? Damien met her eyes, seeing the fear and hope warring there. I don't know, he admitted. But I promise you this, whatever world we build, it will be one where she's protected, where her abilities are seen as gifts instead of tools to be exploited. And us? Maya's voice was barely audible. What happens to us? The question held layers of meaning neither of them was ready to address directly. The growing connection between them, the way Lily had claimed him as family, the possibility that a broken alpha and a widowed nurse might build something together from the ruins of their separate tragedies. That's up to you, Damien said. But whatever you decide, I'll be here. For both of you. Maya looked around the warehouse that had become their temporary sanctuary, concrete walls and folding tables, ancient prophecies and financial crimes, a 5-year-old girl whose innocent drawings might hold the key to saving or destroying an entire way of life. All right, she said, her voice steady despite everything. Tell me what we need to do. Outside the warehouse, unknown to the small family planning their resistance, Marcus Steele was already mobilizing his next phase. The first attacks had been about elimination. The second phase would be about acquisition. And at the center of his plans was one very special little girl whose abilities would either secure his empire or bring it crashing down around him. The broken alpha prophecy was about to be tested, and the supernatural world held its breath to see whether ancient words would prove salvation or destruction for them all. If you're still listening to this story up to this point, why don't you subscribe to this channel to continue getting impactful daily stories like this? We would be most grateful if you can do that to help boost this video to reach everyone. Chapter 5. The call came at dawn, Maya's phone buzzing with an unknown number that filled the warehouse with dread before anyone even answered. Hello, Maya. Marcus Steele's voice was smooth as poisoned honey. I believe I have something that belongs to you. Damien's enhanced hearing caught every word through the phone's speaker. Maya's face had gone white, her hands shaking as she gripped the device. Where is she? Maya's voice was deadly quiet, the tone Damien had heard her use with difficult patients who needed absolute clarity. Safe. For now. The child is quite remarkable. Her territorial mapping abilities exceed even my expectations. She's been drawing the most fascinating pictures. Marcus's laugh held no warmth. Did you know she can sense supernatural bloodlines? Fascinating skill for someone so young. Elena had been monitoring police scanners and PAC communications from her laptop. She looked up with urgency, mouthing Shadow Moon Tower, while pointing at her screen. What do you want? Maya demanded. Simple. Damien Blackthorne surrenders himself within 24 hours, and you both get to walk away from this. The child, of course, will remain with us. Her abilities are far too valuable to waste on a normal human life. The line went dead. Maya stared at the silent phone for a long moment, then threw it against the concrete wall with enough force to shatter the screen. Her grief and rage filled the warehouse like a living thing. We're getting her back, she said, her voice carrying absolute certainty. Maya, Elena started. No. Maya turned to face them both, and Damien saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not just maternal fury, but the cold precision of someone who'd been trained for exactly this kind of situation. I've spent 2 years believing my husband died in a random accident. I've watched my daughter develop abilities I didn't understand. I've had my home destroyed and my life turned upside down. She walked to one of the equipment cases Elena had brought and began pulling out items with practiced efficiency: tactical vest, communication gear, weapons that she handled with startling familiarity. David didn't just research werewolves, she continued, checking the magazine of a pistol with professional competence. He trained me. Said it was for general self-defense, but now I understand. He was preparing me for this world. For creatures like Marcus who see other people as resources to be exploited. Damien watched her transform from exhausted single mother to something far more dangerous. You know how to use those? David insisted. Shooting range twice a week, hand-to-hand combat training, tactical planning exercises. Maya's smile held sharp edges. I thought he was being paranoid. Turns out he was being prophetic. Elena pulled up building schematics on her laptop. Shadow Moon Tower. 43 stories, highest level security. And tonight Marcus is holding his coronation ceremony. Every major pack leader in North America will be there to witness him claim the Alpha throne. Perfect, Damien said, studying the building plans. He'll want maximum witnesses for Lily's abilities. Proof that he has the resources to modernize the supernatural world. It's a trap, Elena pointed out. He's counting on you walking in there. Then we don't walk, Maya said. We infiltrate. Over the next 6 hours, they planned an assault that would have made David Chen proud. Elena used her legal connections to access building plans, security protocols, and staff schedules. Maya applied her medical knowledge to identify weaknesses in the tower's defenses: service elevators, emergency exits, ventilation systems that could provide covert access. But it was Damien who provided the key insight that would make their plan possible. Marcus expects the old me, he said, reviewing their approach routes. An alpha who would charge in with brute force, relying on physical dominance and pack loyalty. He's planned for that kind of attack. What's the alternative? Elena asked. Damien smiled, and for the first time since his paralysis, it was the expression of a predator who'd found his prey. We show him what a broken alpha can really do. Shadow Moon Tower stood against the evening sky like a monument to supernatural power, its glass and steel facade hiding the ancient pack politics that had shaped the building's purpose. The coronation ceremony was scheduled for midnight, symbolic timing that would mark Marcus's claim to alpha status when supernatural power traditionally peaked. Maya and Damien approached from the underground parking garage, their stolen catering van blending perfectly with the dozens of service vehicles preparing for the night's event. Elena had split off 3 blocks away, using her legal credentials to enter through the main lobby as an invited observer, representing neutral pack interests. Remember, Maya said quietly, checking her earpiece one final time, we're not here to fight Marcus's army. We're here to get Lily and expose his real plans to the pack leaders. Damien nodded, though his wolf was prowling beneath his skin with barely contained violence. Every instinct demanded he tear through the building until he found the child who'd become packed to him, but Maya was right. This required precision, not rage. The service elevator carried them to the 39th floor, where Marcus had converted an entire level into what he called his research facility. The sterile corridors and laboratory equipment told a story that chilled Damien to his bones. This wasn't just about territorial sales or political power. Marcus was conducting supernatural experiments. They found Lily in a room that looked like a medical facility crossed with a children's playroom. She was drawing at a small table while technicians monitored her vital signs and recorded her artwork. Her pictures showed packed territories across 3 continents, information that should have been impossible for anyone to possess, let alone a 5-year-old child. Enhanced territorial awareness combined with dormant bloodline sensitivity, one technician was saying into a recording device. Subject demonstrates unprecedented ability to map supernatural boundaries regardless of geographic distance or political affiliation. Maya's hand moved to her weapon, but Damien stopped her. 2 guards flanked the room's entrance, and their approach would trigger alarms that would bring Marcus's entire security force down on them. "There's another way," he said, his enhanced senses mapping the building's layout through sound and scent. "The ventilation system connects directly to the main conference room. If we can get Lily out and reach the ceremony..." "You'll what?" challenged Marcus to single combat. Maya's voice held concern and frustration. "Damien, you're brilliant and dangerous, but he's expecting you to try something like that." "I'm not going to fight him," Damien said quietly. "I'm going to let him destroy himself." Elena's voice crackled through their earpieces. "Conference room is filling up. Looks like every major alpha in North America showed up for this coronation. If Marcus is planning to reveal his modernization program, this is when he'll do it." Damien studied the laboratory setup around them, the way Lily's drawings were being cataloged and analyzed, the sophisticated equipment designed to measure and amplify her supernatural abilities. "Maya," he said slowly, "what if Marcus isn't just planning to sell packed territories? What if he's planning to militarize them?" The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. Enhanced territorial mapping, supernatural boundary analysis, dormant bloodline research. Marcus wasn't just betraying pack traditions for money. He was developing the tools to create supernatural military units for human governments. "Werewolf soldiers," Maya breathed. "Controlled and commanded through territorial manipulation. And Lily's abilities would be the key to training them. She could map any territory, understand any pack hierarchy, identify dormant bloodlines that could be activated and weaponized." Their earpieces crackled again. "Ceremony's starting," Elena reported. "Marcus is making his opening remarks about leading the supernatural world into a profitable future." "Time to go," Maya said, but Damien was already moving. Instead of the carefully planned infiltration route, he rolled his wheelchair directly toward the laboratory's main entrance. The guards straightened as he approached, their hands moving to concealed weapons. "Gentlemen," Damien said pleasantly, "I believe Marcus is expecting me." The confrontation in the conference room 43 floors above was everything Marcus had planned and nothing he'd expected. Damien entered not as a broken fugitive seeking mercy, but as a legitimate alpha making a formal challenge before the assembled pack leaders. Maya flanked him in full tactical gear, her presence serving notice that humans were no longer passive victims in supernatural politics. "Damien Blackthorne," Marcus said from the podium where he'd been outlining his vision of modernized pack management. "How good of you to join us. Though I notice you brought unauthorized guests." "Maya Chun," Damien announced to the assembled alphas, "widow of David Chun and mother of Lily Chun, whose abilities you've been exploiting for your illegal research program." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Pack leaders who'd come expecting a political ceremony were suddenly confronted with accusations of human experimentation and territorial fraud. "I've also brought evidence," Maya said, producing the documents Elena had compiled, showing systematic theft of pack territories, illegal sales to human developers, and conspiracy to murder federal agents. Marcus's composure cracked for the first time. "You can't prove any of that." "I can," said a voice from the back of the room. Lily walked through the conference room doors, not as a captive, but as someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Behind her came Elena, leading several pack leaders who'd been shown the full scope of Marcus's research facility. "Show them, Lily," Maya said gently. Lily moved to the center of the room and began to draw on the polished conference table with her fingers, leaving invisible trails that suddenly blazed with supernatural light. The territorial map that appeared showed not just current pack boundaries, but the systematic destruction Marcus had been orchestrating, Sacred lands sold and developed, ancient territories fragmented beyond recognition, pack families scattered and broken. This is what he's been doing, Lily said in her clear 5-year-old voice. Breaking the wolves' homes so they have to fight for the bad men who give them new places to live. The assembled alphas erupted in outrage as they recognized their own territories in Lily's devastating map. Pack lands that Marcus had told them were under negotiation were already marked as sold, developed, destroyed. "You've been lying to us for months," Alpha Morrison of the Northern Cascades pack snarled. "My territory, you told me it was protected." "Your territory was an inefficient use of resources," Marcus replied, his mask finally slipping entirely. "All of your territories are inefficient. The supernatural world needs modernization, militarization, profitability." "Under whose authority?" demanded Alpha Rodriguez from the Southwest Territories. "Under mine." Marcus's voice echoed with alpha dominance, but the assembled pack leaders weren't backing down. "I have the vision to lead our kind into the future. I have the resources to make werewolves into the dominant species on this planet." "You have nothing," Damien said quietly, and somehow his voice carried to every corner of the room. "No vision, no legitimate authority, no real understanding of what leadership means." Marcus turned on him with pure hatred. "Leadership? You're in a wheelchair, Blackthorn. You can't even run with your own pack." "You're right," Damien agreed. "I can't run. I can't hunt the way I used to. I can't challenge you to physical combat or dominate through brute force." He rolled his wheelchair forward until he was directly in front of Marcus, surrounded by the most powerful werewolves in North America. "But that's not what the prophecy was about, was it?" Damien continued. "The broken alpha wasn't broken physically. He was broken free from the old ways of doing things. Free from the idea that leadership comes through violence and fear." Maya stepped up beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder in a gesture that spoke of partnership rather than protection. "Real leadership," Damien said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction, "comes from building something better instead of destroying what came before. It comes from protecting the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. It comes from bringing people together instead of tearing them apart." Lily's territorial map pulsed with renewed light, but now it showed something different. Pack boundaries healing, scattered families reuniting, humans and werewolves finding ways to coexist and support each other. "This is what she really sees," Maya said, looking around the room at faces that were beginning to understand. "Not the world as it is, but the world as it could be. A world where children like Lily are protected instead of used as weapons." Marcus pulled a gun from his jacket, but before he could raise it, every alpha in the room had moved to block his line of fire. Elena stepped forward with a warrant for his arrest on federal charges, while pack leaders who minutes before had been willing to accept his leadership now saw him clearly for what he was. "The vote," Alpha Morrison said formally. "All in favor of recognizing Damien Blackthorn as legitimate alpha of the Shadow Moon Pack and rightful leader of the Territorial Coalition?" The response was unanimous. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, still screaming about efficiency and modernization, Damien found himself facing a room full of powerful werewolves who were looking to him for leadership he wasn't sure he was ready to provide. "So," Alpha Rodriguez said with a slight smile, "what happens now, Broken Alpha?" Damien looked at Maya, who gave him the kind of smile that spoke of faith and partnership and the possibility of building something unprecedented together. He looked at Lily, who was still drawing maps of the future on the conference table, her pictures showing wolves and humans learning to share the same world. "Now," he said, "we figure out how to make her drawings come true." Outside Shadow Moon Tower, the city glittered with possibilities that none of them had imagined 24 hours earlier. The supernatural world had its new leader, not the strongest or the most dominant, but the one who understood that real power came from bringing people together instead of tearing them apart. The Broken Alpha had risen not by conquering his limitations, but by transforming them into strengths that no one had seen coming. And in a small apartment across town that they would rebuild together, 3 coloring books waited on a kitchen table, ready to help a little girl draw maps of the world they were all going to create. Chapter 6, New Pack, New Rules. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had once been Marcus Steele's executive office, now transformed into something that would have horrified the former corrupt Alpha. The polished mahogany and intimidating artwork had been replaced with comfortable seating, children's drawings pinned to bulletin boards, and a coffee station that welcomed anyone who needed caffeine and conversation. Maya stood at the window, watching Lily play in the courtyard below with other pack children, both human and werewolf. The sight still amazed her sometimes, how naturally the kids adapted to differences that had taken the adult world centuries to navigate. The city council approved the expansion permits, Elena announced, entering with an armload of legal documents and her usual efficient smile. 3 more buildings in the downtown district for the integrated housing project. Any resistance? Damien asked from behind his desk, where he was reviewing applications for the supernatural refugee program they'd established. Some, but nothing we can't handle through proper channels. Turns out when you approach these things through legitimate legal frameworks instead of threats and intimidation, people are surprisingly reasonable. Maya turned from the window, still marveling at how much had changed since that midnight confrontation in Shadowmoon Tower. The corporate empire Marcus had built through fear and corruption was slowly being transformed into something unprecedented. A business structure dedicated to supernatural rights and human werewolf integration. "How many families this month?" she asked, noting the stack of applications on Damien's desk. 17. Pack members whose territories were sold out from under them, mostly. A few lone wolves who've been hiding in human society for decades. Damien's expression grew thoughtful. They're all asking the same question: is it really safe to come out of hiding? Maya knew that question intimately. 6 months ago, she'd been a single mother working double shifts to pay medical bills, completely unaware that the supernatural world existed. Now she was what Elena diplomatically called Luna to the Shadowmoon Pack. A title that still felt strange but was becoming more natural each day. The transition hadn't been smooth. Pack members loyal to Marcus had initially resisted taking orders from a human, especially one mated to an alpha they still saw as damaged. But Maya's no-nonsense medical competence and absolute refusal to be intimidated had gradually won respect, even from the most traditional werewolves. "Dr. Chun to the clinic, please. Dr. Chun to the clinic." The announcement over the building's intercom made Maya smile. The medical facility they'd established on the 2nd floor treated both human and supernatural patients, often for conditions that regular hospitals couldn't even diagnose. Maya had become the go-to physician for everything from silver poisoning to transformation-related injuries. "Go," Damien said, noting her expression. "I'll handle the refugee applications." Maya paused to kiss his forehead, a gesture so natural now that she barely registered the intimacy. The mating bond they'd formed during the battle with Marcus had created a connection deeper than traditional marriage. She could sense his emotional state across the building, feel his contentment when pack business went well, share his determination when challenges arose. The clinic was bustling with typical afternoon activity. Mrs. Rodriguez from Maya's old apartment complex was having her blood pressure checked by one of the volunteer nurses, while a teenage werewolf waited nervously for his first transformation counseling session. "What's the emergency?" Maya asked Jennifer, the human nurse coordinator who'd joined their staff 3 months ago. "Not an emergency exactly, but unusual." Jennifer led her toward examination room 3. "Patient came in asking specifically for you. Says it's about dormant bloodline activation." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Dormant bloodline cases were rare and complex, often involving people who'd lived their entire lives as human only to discover supernatural heritage later. The psychological adjustment could be as challenging as the physical changes. The patient was a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed but clearly anxious. She looked up when Maya entered, relief flooding her features. "Dr. Chin? I'm Sarah Williams. I've been reading about your work with supernatural human integration." Sarah's hands twisted in her lap. I think I'm not entirely human, and I don't know what to do about it." Maya settled into the chair across from her, noting the subtle signs she'd learned to recognize. Enhanced awareness of surroundings, unconscious territorial positioning, the way Sarah's nostrils flared slightly as she processed scents most humans couldn't detect. "Tell me what's been happening," Maya said gently. Over the next hour, Sarah described a pattern Maya had seen before. Dreams of running on 4 legs, inexplicable knowledge of local pack politics, the ability to sense supernatural creatures despite never having encountered them before. Classic dormant bloodline activation, probably triggered by the increased supernatural activity in the city since the integration project began. "The good news," Maya explained as she completed her examination, "is that dormant activation at your age is usually manageable. You're not going to suddenly lose control or transform unexpectedly. The challenging part is adjusting your understanding of who you are." Will I have to join a pack? Leave my family? Maya smiled. That's the beauty of what we're building here. You don't have to choose between your human life and your supernatural heritage. We're creating space for people to be both. After Sarah left with information packets and a follow-up appointment, Maya found herself thinking about integration challenges they were still solving. The medical aspects were actually the easiest part. Supernatural physiology was well documented once you knew what to look for. The social and emotional complications were far more complex. Her phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Council meeting in an hour. PAC leadership wants to discuss the Portland expansion. Maya headed back upstairs, passing the community center they'd established on the third floor. Through the open doors, she could see Lily leading a group of children through what looked like diplomatic exercises. Young humans and werewolves practicing conflict resolution and cultural exchange. At 5 years old, Lily had become something unprecedented, a bridge between species. Her dormant abilities had evolved over the past 6 months into a gift for understanding and translating between human and supernatural perspectives. She was too young for formal ambassador training, but her natural empathy and territorial awareness made her invaluable for easing integration challenges. The PAC Council meeting was held in what had once been Marcus's boardroom, now reconfigured with comfortable seating that accommodated both human and werewolf attendees. Representatives from 6 allied PACs had gathered to discuss expanding their integration model to other cities. Portland's expressing interest, Alpha Morrison reported, but they want assurances about security protocols. Their PAC elders are concerned about exposure to human government agencies. Understandable, Damien replied, reviewing the proposal documents. Maya, what do you think about the medical infrastructure requirements? Maya studied the Portland demographic data. They'd need at least 3 physicians trained in supernatural medicine, plus emergency protocols for transformation-related incidents. I could train a team, but it would take 6 months minimum. What about legal frameworks? Elena added. Portland's zoning laws aren't as flexible as ours. We'd need to work through city council before establishing any integrated housing. The discussion continued for 2 hours, covering everything from education policies to emergency response protocols. Maya found herself increasingly amazed by the complexity of what they were attempting, essentially creating a new social structure that had never existed before. The real question, said Alpha Rodriguez via video conference from her Arizona territory, is whether this model is sustainable long-term. You've created something beautiful in your city, but can it survive outside the unique circumstances that made it possible? It was a fair concern. Their success had been built on very specific factors. Damien's reputation, Maya's medical expertise, Lily's unique abilities, and the catalyst of Marcus's corruption that had made change necessary. Could other communities replicate those conditions? Maybe they don't need to replicate our exact model, Maya said thoughtfully. Maybe each community needs to find its own path to integration based on their specific strengths and challenges. Damien nodded, his expression reflecting the same realization. We're not trying to create a franchise operation. We're trying to prove that cooperation is possible, then help others find their own ways to make it work. After the meeting, Maya and Damien retreated to their private office, a smaller space behind the main executive area where they could work together without the constant interruptions of PAC business. Tired? Damien asked, noting the way Maya rubbed her temples. Good tired, she replied, settling into the chair beside his desk. 6 months ago I was worried about paying Lily's medical bills. Now I'm helping plan supernatural integration policies for the entire Pacific Northwest. Any regrets? Maya considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, her biggest concerns had been work schedules and grocery budgets. Now she lived in a world where ancient prophecies shaped modern politics, and her daughter could map supernatural territories with finger paints. Only one, she said finally. I wish David could have seen this. He spent his career trying to understand your world, trying to build bridges between humans and supernatural creatures. He would have loved to see it actually working. Damien reached for her hand, their mating bond carrying wordless comfort and understanding. He did see it. Everything he taught you, all his research, his protection of your family, it all led to this moment. Through the office windows, they could see Lily in the courtyard below, now joined by Elena and several other PAC members for what looked like an impromptu picnic. The sight was so normal, so peacefully domestic, that Maya felt tears prick her eyes. What is it? Damien asked, sensing her emotional shift through their bond. Just this. All of it. 6 months ago, I was a widow struggling to raise my daughter alone. Now I have a pack, a mate, a purpose I never imagined. Maya wiped her eyes, laughing at her own sentimentality. I'm happy, Damien. Really, truly happy. And that terrifies me because I know how quickly everything can change. It can, he agreed. But that's true for everyone, supernatural or human. The difference is that now you have an entire pack committed to protecting what we've built together. A commotion in the courtyard below caught their attention. Lily was standing in the center of the picnic group, her small body rigid with excitement. As they watched, she began to glow with the same supernatural light that accompanied her territorial mapping abilities. Something's happening, Maya said, already moving toward the door. They reached the courtyard just as Lily's transformation began. But this wasn't the violent, painful shift that Maya had read about in supernatural medical texts. This was something entirely different, a change triggered not by anger or fear, but by pure joy. Light seemed to flow through Lily's small body as her form shifted and condensed. Where a 5-year-old girl had stood moments before, a silver wolf pup now sat looking up at them with familiar brown eyes bright with happiness. The assembled pack members were stunned into silence. First transformations usually occurred during adolescence, triggered by strong emotional stress. A 5-year-old shifting from pure joy was unprecedented. Lily, now in wolf form, padded over to Maya and Damien, her tail wagging with unmistakable contentment. She looked up at them with an expression that clearly communicated. This is my family. This is my pack. This is where I belong. Oh, baby, Maya whispered, kneeling to stroke the pup's silver fur. Look at you. Elena pulled out her phone, documenting the transformation with the detailed precision of someone who understood its historical significance. The first recorded joyful transformation, she said quietly. This is going to change everything we know about werewolf development. Damien reached down from his wheelchair to touch Lily's head, his expression filled with wonder. She's not just bridging our worlds, he said. She's showing us what the next generation can become. What happens when children grow up believing that being different is something to celebrate instead of hide. Around them, the pack had formed an unconscious protective circle. Werewolves and humans alike creating a safe space for Lily to explore her new form. Several of the werewolf children had shifted as well, recognizing this as a moment of celebration rather than crisis. Will she be able to change back? Maya asked, the medical professional in her cataloging potential complications. When she's ready, Damien assured her. But look at her. Does she seem distressed? Lily had found a stick and was happily playing tug-of-war with one of the other wolf pups, her transformation as natural as any other childhood milestone. As the sun began to set over their unusual family gathering, Maya felt the deep contentment that came from finding her place in the world. Not the place she'd planned or expected, but the one she was meant to fill. 6 months ago, Damien had been a broken alpha who'd lost everything he thought defined him. Maya had been a widow struggling to build a life from the ruins of tragedy. Lily had been a little girl carrying abilities she didn't understand. Now they were something unprecedented. A family that bridged 2 worlds, leaders who'd transformed the very definition of strength and power, pioneers of a future where being different was cause for celebration rather than fear. So, Maya said, watching her daughter play in her new form while the pack looked on with protective affection, what happens next? Damien smiled, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. Next, we keep building. Keep growing. Keep proving that there's more than one way to be strong. In the courtyard, Lily yipped with pure happiness, and the sound echoed off the buildings around them like a promise. The future was bright, and it belonged to those brave enough to create it together. The broken alpha had found his crown, not in domination or fear, but in love and acceptance and the revolutionary idea that true strength came from lifting others up instead of tearing them down. And in a small silver wolf pup playing joyfully in the fading light, the prophecy's real meaning finally became clear. The future belonged to those who could transform not through anger or violence, but through hope, love, and the unshakable belief that different worlds could become one. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also to appreciate this community too. I would like to hear your wonderful opinion about this story. Please comment below.